We are live. It is Rich Lieberman, and we're going to do some unique programming. I say unique. We're going to talk to John Rothman here in a second, but we have all these ongoing developments taking place coming out of New Orleans. Now we have a similar situation, although far less tragically compelling, ongoing in Las Vegas with a bombing outside of the Trump Hotel in suburban Las Vegas. But on the phone, as I just mentioned, um, and it's everything is fluid now. But on the phone with me is former KGO Radio talk show host. He's written many books. He's talked about the Middle East in particular many a times. I'm of course speaking with John Rothman. John, cliche to say good to be with you, but the first person I thought of with all this ongoing news is yourself. What to make of your reaction with what's happening or what tragically took place in New Orleans a fortnight ago?
The continuing actions by radical Islamists represents a major threat. You will note that the football game scheduled for today has been postponed until tomorrow. The reason is a question of security. It was interesting to note that the observation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation is that they believe it was more than one person.
Yeah.
Now, this is all speculation, Rich.
Yeah.
But radical Islam is on the march, and they are determined to accomplish their goals. So I wrote a book in 2008.
You did.
With my colleague David Dallin called Icon of Evil, Hitler's Mufti and the Rise of Radical Islam. We basically predicted that this sort of thing was going to take place, and it should be no surprise. It will be a real challenge for the outgoing Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration to deal with the rise in radical Islamic terrorism.
It will, as you indicate, we're real early in the investigation. But this guy, whoever he was, and he's dead now, had an ISIS flag planted on the back of the Ford pickup, which he used to kill people. And you're seeing some of these images and eyewitness accounts and so forth. I talked about it today. We've become numb to this. Already, I'm hearing, I've monitored a whole bunch of channels. We might want to point out, and by the way, I'm talking to John Rothman, former KGO talk show host, written books on the Middle East, presidential historian, et cetera, et cetera. I might want to put all the networks now here on New Year's Day are covering this now. And I hope to God this is not a mini 9/11, because now we have news, not just what took place overnight in New Orleans. We now have although far less tragically, a bomb, a guy in a truck. They don't know if it's actually a guy or a woman, exploded right in front of the Trump Hotel in suburban Las Vegas. That just happened within the hour. So now we have New Orleans. We have this coordinated attack, perhaps in Las Vegas, very eerily similar to 9/11 with New York, and then Pennsylvania, and of course Washington D.C. at the Pentagon. So all the networks, including even the cable networks, are now speaking about this. Do you sense? The guy in New Orleans, they're now saying was massively planned, that this guy absolutely must have had help because they had to know logistics and getting a truck and getting the various type of mechanisms that he used to create this terror. Do you sense now that this was no lone wolf, that indeed there is some kind of a something or some organization behind this?
I don't know, but I can tell you this, that whether it is an organized effort or lone wolves, the danger is equally present. And that's the reason why we must proceed with great caution. It is a radical Islamic attack.
Yeah.
The car or the truck that was used had an ISIS flag in it.
Right.
And there is no doubt that this is a phenomenon, not just in the United States, but in Europe, and I regret to say, probably around the world. So this is going to be a tense time when speculation, of course, is rampant, but we have to go by the facts. And the facts are this is a growing problem that the Biden administration will confront as it leaves office. And remember, in just 20 days, Donald Trump will become president of the United States, and this then will be squarely on his responsibility and watch as well. We must be united with our allies in fighting against radical Islamic terror. That is a clear and present danger.
We're talking with John Rothman here about this, the ongoing situation in New Orleans. Now we have an attack, not as, shall we say, killing, not as terror-laden as what's taken place in New Orleans, outside of Las Vegas, at the Trump Hotel itself. John, what the common sense question? What can we even do about this? These are, I mean, obviously, if this is something more than just this one person, and it's ISIS or whether it's Hezbollah or a terrorist or Iran or whatever, what actuality, what can we do about something like this? We can beef up our intelligence, but you can't prevent something like this where you don't know. It's the attack of surprise. What can you do?
Rich, we don't know.
Yeah.
And there's no way to control it. This is not in the same as a 9/11, which was a prepared attack that caused massive damage. We don't know whether or not these are lone wolves. What we do know is that someone who wishes to do damage and who affiliates with radical Islam can simply rent a truck and do tremendous destructive damage. And so I also remember Timothy McVeigh and what happened in Oklahoma when he prepared a truck bomb that did incredible damage. These are real concerns. And that's why it's important that police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Secret Service, and all of our intelligence agencies work together to try to get a sense of what's happening. If over the next few days we see more attacks, there will be even a greater concern about what we can do to prevent them. Maybe because if it is a lone wolf, maybe there is nothing we can.
Well, you're more of an expert than I am on that, but I don't think this is a lone wolf now. Now, what I've read, what I've watched, and whatever you've been watching. But what I was going to ask you, and I think is far more interesting, right, in a serious manner, is you have a new administration in less than 3 weeks now, right? You have technically President Joe Biden versus President-elect Donald Trump. The protocol is, I want to ask you that. So I imagine Biden and Vice President Harris and various, Homeland Security, CIA, et cetera, is it not the fact that they are still in office and still president and vice president, et cetera, is Trump, you think, being briefed on this with regards to what's taking place, especially since his hotel just got bombed? We don't know we do know that it's questionable. It's very, very targeted. So are they being briefed along with Joe Biden?
Of course there's close coordination. But
Okay.
remember, we have only one president at a time.
Right.
And only Biden and his administration will be able to respond effectively until January 20th at 12 noon.
Have we had ever, other than Iran, when they let the hostages go, right seconds, literally, or minutes before Reagan took office, have we had anything like this on the eve of an inauguration where you have the changing of power and this? Okay.
There's no precedent for this at all.
So what do we do then in that regard?
Well, what we do is what is happening now. Coordinated efforts by American intelligence, by the local police departments, decisions being made like postponing the football game for 24 hours and maybe longer, beefing up security. Well, we saw it last night in Times Square, where we had massive security. And perhaps that discouraged extremists from acting. But here's the danger, Rich. The danger is what happens, like what happened in New Orleans, when you're not expecting something.
Well, that's what I was just going to follow up with. They're not that stupid. They're not going to pick on New York when they know that the security is going to be at its highest. They're not going to pick on, unless it's out of the blue, like 9/11 was with the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. They're not going to pick easy targets like that. They're going to go after, God forbid, residual targets like New Orleans, perhaps, God forbid, the Super Bowl, which ironically takes place in New Orleans this year. So there's, again, virtually in that regard, there's nothing we could do about that short of being lucky, or am I wrong?
Well, no, you have to understand we beef up our security.
Wow.
We make sure the precautions are taken.
There was security in New Orleans last night on New Year's Eve, and look what happened. So I'm
this is something, I mean, I can't give you, nobody can give you, even those of us who are in this business,
right.
Can give you definitive answers. All we can say is you have to be prepared in every community for a worst case scenario. What is staggering in all of this is if it was coordinated by a group, that will have to be discovered. If it is an individual acting out of rage, it's hard to do anything to stop that.
I can't. I mean, again, we're dealing with a crime story here. I can't believe, or I can't fathom that this was a lone wolf guy, especially with what he needed to do this. How he put the ISIS flag on the back of the pickup truck. I mean, we don't know that. No, I know. I know.
If there are a series of attacks over the next several hours or days.
Oh, well, then we know for sure that it's coordinated.
There is more to this, but also, and I want everybody to understand, a lone wolf can be inspired to do something. Renting a car, crashing it into something, killing people. This is something that can be done on an individual basis by a person enraged. May I use an analogy?
Please.
It's the same thing with school shootings. They don't have to be coordinated.
Yeah.
But people learn. It's the lone wolf syndrome.
Well, this is far more perhaps chilling because it comes on a day which theoretically we're all gathered around and celebrating the new year, watching football games, and in our own serenity, which has been obviously marred by this that's terrorism 101. Yeah.
To make us vulnerable. And how we resolve that is a tough nut to crack. I don't have an answer.
Oh, let me ask you this, because I have a couple more questions. And we're talking with John Rothman, the Middle East expert, written many books, used to be the KGO radio talk show host, is an eminent expert on the Middle East, presidential historian, et cetera, et cetera. We're discussing what's happening, what has transpired tragically overnight in New Orleans, where you have at least 10 people are dead, terrorists driving his F-150 through a crowd of revelers, New Year's Eve on Bourbon Street. And then we have this latest thing in Las Vegas, which we don't know yet if there's a coordination or if there's a connection between these events, although it's suspicious. Could theoretically, John, could Trump come in, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but could he come in and, much like Bush did when even though they were not connected to 9/11, could he, now we have a picture of this suspect, this killer, who committed the carnage in New Orleans State, is right in my background. Could conceivably Trump take us to some kind of, I don't want to say war, but could he could they do a coordinated bombing with Israel in Iran if this is found to have traces of Iran in the involvement?
Donald Trump has already said, relating to the hostages that are still being held by Hamas, that if they are not free by the time he takes office, there will be hell to pay. I can't tell you what Donald Trump is going to do. I can tell you that his rhetorical flourishes are firm, and he is someone who is determined to succeed in making sure that we are safe. That is his job as president. So we have to now wait and see. And frankly, Rich, as we are speaking, there will be new developments.
Of course.
And I want you to be aware I am
Right.
available this
No,
afternoon.
absolutely. And I've got you on my Rolodex here, my electronic.
You were going to say speed dial.
Well, that too. Well, God, we still dial, in this electronic world that we're in. But real quickly too, do you think, given what's also, I heard this from a very reputable reporter on ABC, that this could have remnants dealing with the attack on Israel October of 2023, the October, which was largely Iran and who am I speaking? The other age, Hamas. Could this be Hamas related, because Israel, obviously, an ally of the United States, and vice versa?
Well, you know now that in the case of New Orleans, it was one man or woman who had an ISIS flag, and who clearly planned what was going to happen. And all I can tell you is, whether it's organized or whether it's a lone wolf, the danger is imminent and direct.
Yeah, it's become a part of our daily lives. And I said, and I hope to God I'm wrong, that we have almost, in a weird way, become numb to these types of events. And I know in America we haven't had, other than obviously 9/11, but a direct hit like on our homeland. But this has become so almost matter of fact, and people are like, maybe perhaps we're too sort of escaped from all this.
It's the same thing with school shootings.
Yeah.
Rich.
Well,
We have become dulled
Yep.
to the dangers which exist.
Yeah.
And it's up to our security forces and the President of the United States to provide the necessary leadership. So I know what I'm going to be doing this afternoon.
Oh,
I'm going to be listening
yes.
avidly
Yeah.
to what develops, and we just have to hope, and I do say this sincerely, that all of this can be handled in a way which does not expand and grow.
Well,
but we do know, and it's very important, that the Trump administration incoming is determined to combat all of this, and I'll be interested in what President-elect Trump has to say later today.
We will have you on a speed dial, because if something does break again today, or we have maybe more news, or maybe something with specifics to what's happening, or what happened in New Orleans, or what could be happening in Vegas, and God forbid anywhere else, John Rothman has been on the line with me and hopefully a lot of you, and we will discuss and counteract with each other, and maybe perhaps talk to John later in the day. I appreciate your time on a moment's notice, and once again, thank you for participating in this. And in a way, I hope don't have to call you in that regard later in the day, but very, very helpful. Okay, John. Thank you. That's John Rothman.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
John Rothman, former KGO host, and he's written books about the Middle East. He's also a presidential historian, and he has been a guest here live on this rather pointed New Year's Day of 2025. You can watch me whenever. I'll give you updates as to whether I'll be on later in the day. And we also have a chance to, perhaps if you want to call in, maybe we could talk, or you could text me, and we will provide what it used to be a former radio station that did its basic programming did years ago, but is no longer around to do that. I'm Rich Lieberman. This has been the Rich Lieberman Media Pulse. Here we are on New Year's Day talking about what's taking place in the news, and we will see you later.